Are the Kings the biggest wild card this year? Let's talk about it. So, as I'm recording this, Tuesday slate of games just ended. Let's go through each one. Sacramento versus the 76ers. I'm not going to lie. Game was over by halftime. Sixers were leading by 25. In the case of Sacramento, man, it's that age-old adage, There was a lid on the basket. The inefficiency was killing them. And this, I think, in combination with the Kings' pace, was really what led to their downfall. It led them to being in a hole real quickly. And, when you're not able to convert your shots, especially when you're a team that plays with as much pace as the Kings, you can go from putting up 20 on a team to being down by 20 very quickly, I find. But, I guess Sabonis had a solid game, like 20, 10, and 5. Not much to really talk about for there. But for the Sixers, man, some more vintage Harden. I think he had like 20 points, 5 rebounds, 12 assists, and 3 steals at halftime. And, man, Embiid cooking anyone and everyone. It's, man. Everybody was turning up for the Sixers, I think their ability to really have all hands on deck, especially still not having Maxey, James Harden still able to get everyone involved. Not bad. You cannot complain about that. But this game itself, and I think some of the other games that the Kings have played, it led me to ask myself, you see this little thing right here, this little graphic or whatever it may be? I'm not going to lie. I will say it. The 2023 Sacramento Kings are the 2022 Bulls of this year. Now let's talk about that. So when we think about the Bulls from last year, they were first in the conference at one point, but they couldn't beat an elite team to save their life. I don't remember the exact stat, but I know it was like alarmingly bad. Now with the Kings, they're kind of trending towards that in a sense. Obviously their best wins are teams against like the Cavs. Those 2 wins are really solid. The December 9th game, I think they held the Cavs to 15 points in the fourth quarter and had them scoreless for a majority of that quarter. But this take kind of gets a little iffy by the fact that they have the 6th easiest schedule remaining, but they've also had the 6th hardest schedule so far. When you think of the losses they've had, they got the Warriors, Suns, Bucks. Even the next held them to under like 100 points, and in that game itself, they shot 25% from 3. So I think as much as everybody wants to crown the Kings as like this sort of godsend, this whole type of, team that's really reveling in their success, I guess to an extent it is, because when you think about, if you're a Kings fan, just the fact that they're above 500 is like almost as good as a championship in a sense. But I think that a lot of people projecting them to be in the playoffs, well, granted they are right now, I don't think that, even if they do, it's probably a first round exit. But that's a successful season in a sense. I just think that all the hype they're getting, while warranted by the fact that it is the Kings, in the grand scheme of the NBA, I would say they're a year early from where they want to be at in terms of potentially becoming a contender with these pieces. I think the first thing they need to do is move on from Barnes, 31% from 3, EU. They need to trade that for someone who stretches the floor a lot better. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but the 3 is so essential in the NBA, and that's something that especially rings true if you're a Kings team where your 2 best players they can knock down the occasional shot, but they're not going to be like your knockdown shooters. You know what I mean? But, outside of the Suns, they're teams that don't normally go on deep runs in their first year together. I think the Suns are a huge outlier in the grand scheme of things. Maybe the Celtics as well, but that was also a veteran-led team. So I think that undoubtedly the Kings have been one of the better teams to watch this year. I just don't think that they're going to be, I think, as good as everybody's propping them up to be, I would say. But let's move on from that. But they're still the Bulls of this year. Bucks versus Warriors, soft-ass refs. 3 techs in the first quarter, 8 in total. When it comes to the Warriors, just had no pep in the step, as they say. I think any advances they made were quickly answered by Milwaukee. I don't think there was like a big portion of the game where they were leading at all, to come to the top of my head. Granted, that game was like a few hours ago. But they were forced to settle for a lot of threes, I found. Obviously, that's kind of the Warriors' bread and butter. But when you shoot 50 threes compared to the 29 from Milwaukee, but in addition, the Warriors were only +8 from 3, I think that speaks to the fact that you're relying on it very much so. And I think that comes down to the fact that, they're too small. Draymond obviously plays the 5 a lot. Kevon Looney's a little small for what you'd want in like this age of like 7-footers, and with guys like Wembanyama coming next year, the Warriors just don't have the size to compete with these teams like Milwaukee that have 2 7-footers. These teams like The Suns got DeAndre Ayton. Granted, he's not going to win them a series like that. But just the fact that they don't have anybody of significant size outside of someone like James Wiseman is kind of the big reason why I think the Warriors are struggling. Outside of obviously their bench, which is probably the biggest reason, but just an overall reason I think is the fact that they're small. But when you think about this game itself, I think they got out of their game. Not that the Milwaukee Bucks were able to intimidate them mentally or anything like that. I think it came down to the fact that the whistle wasn't blowing their way the entire night. And what happened. As a Bucks fan, I'm happy. As a Warriors fan, for my mom, I think it's not that you don't want the team to succeed, but it's also that what it's been like so far. So you're kind of okay in a sense where it's like, it's not any worse. But, I think the Warriors will get it together. I think everybody agrees with that. Are they going to repeat? Probably not, but you never know. All right, next up. The Bucks. Totally dominating the paint. Plus 18. The rest of the team, I think we're compensating for Giannis's inefficiency. When you look at all the people who had meaningful production in terms of the people who weren't playing garbage minutes, only one guy shot below 50%. I think that was Chris. So you take that any day of the week. When it comes to Giannis himself, I found that, I found that he was settling for a lot of jumpers. At the end of the day, he's MVP. He's somebody that has every right to do that. But especially when you're in a tight game, you see that kind of shot die, and that's not something you're necessarily like wooing yourself about. But overall, they showed how important matchups are. Bucks were plus 18 in rebounds, and again, the Warriors just had nobody who could really contend with that size. Moving on. Suns versus Rockets. I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch this game, mainly because all my parlays got screwed with DA, but let's talk about it real quickly. The Suns are cooked. It's giving 2020 Warriors. Granted, that's only been these last few games, but hey, Josh Okogie got a nice highlight. That'll probably be showed at the end of the year. You can all blow smoke up that. But here's a little stat. In the last 5 games, the Suns have lost by a combined margin of 76 points. But I think a lot of their struggles can be attributed to injuries and not necessarily the fact that they're playing bad. When you think about it, CP3 is just getting back. Devin Booker's missed the past few games. Cam Johnson went out earlier in the year. Jay Crowder's sitting out. And with today's game, Campaign and DeAndre Ayton got knocked out for the entire game. It's just the fact that as much as people want to shit on the Suns, as much as we're all kind of clinging to the fact that they're going to be back in the realm of mediocrity, the fact is that they're a top tier team in the NBA, and a lot of their struggles are attributed to the fact that health is wealth. They say the best ability is availability, and we're seeing how that's ringing true here. The Rockets, respect to them. They pounced on the wounded animal, and what should happen, happened. Moving on. We got the Jazz versus the Pelicans. The 2 top 10 power forwards going head to head. And Laurie came out on top. You can give the battle between those two to Zion, but overall, W is what matters here with the Jazz. Even though it's just a matter of time before they sell, it's hilarious. I think it would be the Jazz to end the Pels' streak. So that's the whole thing there. But in the game itself, Jared Vanderbilt, demon. I think he's kind of the thing that put it over the top, in my opinion, why the Timberwolves completely lost that trade. When you think about a guy like Vanderbilt, you have these guys that are the do-it-all guys, the guys who master of or good at everything, master none kind of thing. But these are the guys I think have the most heart. Think of a guy like Bobby Portis. Well, he's kind of lost a bit of his shooting touch, but there's nobody as gritty. Marcus Smart. He's never going to give you 20 points a game, but his leadership and his grittiness make up for that. Jared Vanderbilt, while I don't think he's in the exact same cloth, it's cut from a similar fabric for sure. Everybody was kind of comparing him to Dennis Rodman. I'm not going to compare him to a Hall of Famer, but the numbers he put up tonight would say different. But overall, I think Jared Vanderbilt's just, man, in the words of, a Kenny All-Star, if we could call him a DJ All-Star, Jared Vanderbilt's that dude. Laurie didn't look like he was missing a beat after missing these 3 games. And then, man, Malik Beasley, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, shout out to the Canadian boy, and the rookie Walker Kessler combined for 51, 21, and 10 with 5 blocks. That's insane. I mean, I think the Pels only put up 100 points, so that's more than half their points. And then when, the bench is doing that, hell yeah, you're going to lose the game. But when we look at the Pelicans, I think it's a lot of the same things with the Kings, you know. Lid on the basket. That's what it comes down to. I think it was a case of the star coming out and nobody really coming along for the ride, you know. It's hard for a player like Zion to be as effective as possible when everybody else is having a dud. But that's not to say that Zion wasn't effective. I mean, he had 26, 9, and 5. That's an amazing game from him. And, you know, the Pelicans are still, I think, the deepest team in the league. When you think about their potential playoff rotation, they could genuinely be like 9, 10 deep. I mean, let's rifle off right now. You know, B.I. is going to be back. Jose Alvarado, Najee Marshall, Larry Nance Jr., Zion, CJ, Jonas, Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels. Last one I'm thinking is right on the tip of my tongue. Not Devontae Graham, but no, just naming that alone, that's a 9-man rotation. When you think about how like tight things get in the playoff race, the fact that you have that depth is just, that's beautiful. Last game of the night, we had the Lakers and Celtics. It just ended by the time I'm recording this, but the Celtics played with their food and very, very closely almost paid the price. The Lakers came with a 32-8 run in the fourth quarter, but the Pels answered right back with a 17-4 of their own. And this game wasn't supposed to be as competitive as it was. You know, the Celtics chose to cruise, and they almost paid the price for that, as I said earlier. I think that, you know, this is one of those games where, yeah, if you're the Celtics, you're happy you got the W, but you're mad at the fact that you had to exert so much energy when you were up so much throughout the entire game. But just looking at it, if you're the Lakers, you don't want to say it's like a loss as a W kind of thing because, you know, you have aging players. You're trying to win a chip. At the end of the day, with how far down you are, you definitely got to start to stack your wins up, especially against these elite like teams. But when we look at it, the Jays were dominating, man. I mean, Jason and Jalen combined for 69. Nice. And 44 of those were from Jason Tatum. And, man, Jaylen Brown, 15 rebounds. That's insane. That has to be a career high. I'm not going to look it up, but pretty sure it is. But that was answered like pretty solidly by AD and Bron. You know, they combined for 70, 21, and 12. That's insane. Russ himself, he had 20, 14, and 5. And when you look at it again, I think what it came down to was the fact that the Celtics let their foot off the gas pedal, and the Lakers gassed out. You saw in that fourth quarter alone, they were already starting to kind of feel it in a sense because AD and Bron played a very, very extended minutes when it came to the fourth, and that kind of shot them in the foot when it came to overtime. And I love Russell Westbrook. I think everybody's very happy to see him thriving in this new role, but when he is your kind of go-to dude down the stretch on a game in overtime, I'm not going to say I don't like your chances, but I don't like your chances. And, you know, you win some, you lose some. That's the age-old saying. That's so dumb, actually. That's stupid. Never mind that. But if you're the Lakers, you're taking this L, and you're seeing that you have the ability to make these runs. But now it's just a matter of everybody else starting to pick up their weight. Because outside of the big three, you know, nobody else really came to play. Lonnie Walker is a guy that I think a lot of people have been raving about, but he wasn't really on anything. Dennis Schroeder, how are you a starter playing 20 minutes and you only scored 2 points? That is asinine to the highest extent. And just overall, you're not seeing too much production from these other guys. And I think when it comes down to it, you know, this kind of burn isn't sustainable at all. LeBron is 38, or he's about to be 38. He's in year 20. There's no reason that he should be playing 40 plus minutes. AD's a beast, you know. AD's back for sure. But you saw in that overtime period, he was gassed. He was about to pass the fuck out. And Russ is a really nice to see him have this resurgence, but when you're not getting any kick, no help from your other guys, it's really dejecting in a sense. It's really easy to see why, you know, nobody's really seeing the Lakers as this potential contender because on paper, you know, everybody likes to say when you have LeBron, you got a chance. When you got a guy like AD as your like supposed number 2, but really stepping into this number 1 role that we've all been hoping for, you love to see that. That's something that thinks you have a chance to win a championship. But with all these pieces surrounding them, that's not really the case. But regardless, we talked about it. I'll see y'all again soon.